Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. It's true. Yes, I have been ill, very ill. But why do you say that I have lost control of my mind? Why do you say that I am mad? Can you not see that I have full control of my mind? Is it not clear that I am not mad? Indeed, the illness only made my mind, my feelings, my senses stronger, more powerful. My sense of hearing especially became more powerful. I could hear sounds I had never heard before. I heard sounds from heaven, and I heard sounds from hell. Listen, listen, and I will tell you how it happened. You will see, you will hear how healthy my mind is. It is impossible to say how the idea first entered my head. There was no reason for what I did. I did not hate the old man. I even loved him. He had never hurt me. I did not want his money. I think it was his eye. His eye was like the eye of a vulture, the eye of one of those terrible birds that watch and wait while an animal dies, and then fall upon the dead body and pull it to pieces to eat it. When the old man looked at me with his vulture eye, a cold feeling went up and down my back. Even my blood became cold. And so, I finally decided I had to kill the old man and close that eye forever. So you think that I am mad? A madman cannot plan. But you should have seen me. During all of that week I was as friendly to the old man as I could be, and warm, and loving. Every night about 12 o'clock I slowly opened his door. And when the door was opened wide enough I put my hand in, and then my head. In my hand I held a light covered over with a cloth so that no light showed. And I stood there quietly. Then, carefully, I lifted the cloth, just a little, so that a single, thin, small light fell across that eye. For 7 nights I did this, 7 long nights, every night at midnight. Always the eye was closed, so it was impossible for me to do the work. For it was not the old man I felt I had to kill. It was the eye, his evil eye. And every morning I went to his room, and with a warm, friendly voice I asked him how he had slept. He could not guess that every night, just at 12, I looked in at him as he slept. The 8th night I was more than usually careful as I opened the door. The hands of a clock moved more quickly than did my hand. Never before had I felt so strongly my own power. I was now sure of success. The old man was lying there not dreaming that I was at his door. Suddenly he moved in his bed. You may think I became afraid. But no. The darkness in his room was thick and black. I knew he could not see the opening of the door. I continued to push the door, slowly, softly. I put in my head. I put in my hand, with the covered light. Suddenly the old man sat straight up in bed and cried, "Who's there?" I stood quite still. For a whole hour I did not move, nor did I hear him again lie down in his bed. He just sat there, listening. Then I heard a sound, a low cry of fear which escaped from the old man. Now I knew that he was sitting up in his bed, filled with fear. I knew that he knew that I was there. He did not see me there. He could not hear me there. He felt me there. Now he knew that death was standing there. Slowly, little by little, I lifted the cloth, until a small light escaped from under it to fall upon that vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and my anger increased as it looked straight at me. I could not see the old man's face. Only that eye, that hard blue eye, and the blood in my body became like ice. Have I not told you that my hearing had become unusually strong? Now I could hear a quick, low, soft sound, like the sound of a clock heard through a wall. It was the beating of the old man's heart. I tried to stand quietly, but the sound grew louder. The old man's fear must have been great indeed, and as the sound grew louder my anger became greater and more painful. But it was more than anger. In the quiet night, in the dark silence of the bedroom my anger became fear, for the heart was beating so loudly that I was sure someone must hear. The time had come. I rushed into the room, crying, "Die, die." The old man gave a loud cry of fear as I fell upon him and held the bedcovers tightly over his head. Still his heart was beating, but I smiled as I felt that success was near. For many minutes that heart continued to beat, but at last the beating stopped. The old man was dead. I took away the bedcovers and held my ear over his heart. There was no sound. Yes, he was dead, dead as a stone. His eye would trouble me no more. So I am mad, you say? You should have seen how careful I was to put the body where no one could find it. First I cut off the head, then the arms and the legs. I was careful not to let a single drop of blood fall on the floor. I pulled up 3 of the boards that formed the floor, and put the pieces of the body there. Then I put the boards down again, carefully, so carefully that no human eye could see that they had been moved. As I finished this work I heard that someone was at the door. It was now 4 o'clock in the morning, but still dark. I had no fear, however, as I went down to open the door. 3 men were at the door, 3 officers of the police. One of the neighbors had heard the old man's cry and had called the police. These 3 had come to ask questions and to search the house. I asked the policeman to come in. The cry, I said, was my own, in a dream. The old man, I said, was away. He had gone to visit a friend in the country. I took them through the whole house, telling them to search it all, to search well. I led them finally into the old man's bedroom. As if playing a game with them I asked them to sit down and talk for a while. My easy, quiet manner made the policemen believe my story. So they sat talking with me in a friendly way. But although I answered them in the same way, I soon wished that they would go. My head hurt and there was a strange sound in my ears. I talked more, and faster. The sound became clearer, and still they sat and talked. Suddenly I knew that the sound was not in my ears. It was not just inside my head. At that moment I must have become quite white. I talked still faster and louder, and the sound, too, became louder. It was a quick, low, soft sound, like the sound of a clock heard through a wall, a sound I knew well. Louder it became, and louder. Why did the men not go? Louder, louder. I stood up and walked quickly around the room. I pushed my chair across the floor to make more noise, to cover that terrible sound. I talked even louder, and still the men sat and talked, and smiled. Was it possible that they could not hear? No, they heard. I was certain of it. They knew. Now it was they who were playing a game with me. I was suffering more than I could bear, from their smiles, and from that sound. Louder, louder, louder. Suddenly I could bear it no longer. I pointed at the boards and cried, yes, yes, I killed him. Pull up the boards and you shall see. I killed him. But why does his heart not stop beating? Why does it not stop? What is the cringiest thing you have done to get a crush's attention? When I was about 15 or 16 years old, I went on a family holiday, with my mom and sister, to Italy. We were staying in a hotel with a shared swimming pool, and there were a few other families with kids of similar ages all hanging around. I used to see this girl, roughly my age or maybe a couple of years older, pretty much every day by the pool. Blonde hair, nice body, just basically gorgeous. I think because she smiled at me a couple of times I convinced myself that she must be the one, and due to boredom, this was before smartphones / the internet, I spent basically the whole week gearing myself up to go and talk to her. I spent days just thinking of ways I could approach her, what to say, building up courage. It was the most important thing in my life at that moment, but was difficult because she was always around her family or I was around mine. There never seemed to be an opening. Then, right at the end of the holiday, the perfect moment presented itself. I was by the pool, alone. She was by the pool, alone. This was my time. This was everything. It all comes down to this moment. So what's it going to be? Am I going to be a man, and approach her, or spend the rest of my life in turmoil wondering what might have been? So I walked up to her. I smile. She smiles. I say hello. She looks confused. I say hello again. She still looks confused. Hi? Nope. That didn't work either. This is going horribly. Why did I do this? Please let me be hit by a sniper right now. Why is there never a sniper? I asked her if she wanted a drink, because, of course, if she can't understand a basic hello in English then a full sentence was definitely the best way to proceed, and she looked even more confused. I think during this whole exchange, which felt like 2 hours but was in reality only about 26 seconds, she had only said the word A. With a mixture of bewilderment and pity. So, I walked to the bar, bought 2 lemonades, I wasn't old enough to buy anything a little more suave, and walked back over to her. I mean, I'm invested at this point, right? No point in backing out now, otherwise I would have just made a total fool out of myself for absolutely no reason. I place her lemonade down next to her. She says, thanks. So she did speak English, the effing liar, and I swagger away feeling like James Bond, until I dropped my glass, which smashed into tiny pieces, most of which went into the pool, which then had to be evacuated while the staff cleaned glass out of it, and I got told off by the lifeguard, right in front of her and her family who had since returned and were all staring at me. What's something you've done as a kid that you feel like a D now for doing? I used to know a little boy whose mom was friends with mine, so they would always take us play with each other while they would hang out. At this time I was very much a tomboy and I was into all things boyish pants, army toys, the color blue, whatever. My favorite show was Yu-Gi-Oh! And my favorite possession was a large deck of cards which I had accumulated slowly over nearly a year using my $5 a week allowance. Within this deck I had finally gotten a Blue Eyes White Dragon. This thing was my holy grail. I kept it in a Ziploc bag inside a plastic sheet inside a binder. Now I don't know the actual rarity of the card but I showed that she off like it was a one-of-a-kind treasure. You know where this is heading. I went over to his house to play and took my binder of cards with me, because I wanted to show off my cool thing and maybe even play the game. Well, I show him and he's insanely jealous. This kid wants my card. Bad. I know he's up to something sneaky so I leave my binder with my mom. Sure, she'll keep my card safe. We head home later and as I'm putting it away on my shelf, I open it to say goodnight to my card, cause, I don't know, I kind of thought they were real like in the show and they would appreciate being talked to. Well, mother effing surprise, it's missing. I'm seething. I never liked this kid anyway. I might have been 7 but I knew he was a spoiled rat bastard. He couldn't stand not having something he wanted. And I knew he took my card, but he would never admit to it in a million years. His mom believed everything he said and my mom was too nice to make a fuss about anything. So parental justice was out. I had to take matters into my own hands. So I convinced my mom to have another play date, at their house. I got out of school an hour earlier than he did, so I convinced the parents we should just go over right after I was done and I could do homework until he got there. The trap was set. I get there and I pretend to use the bathroom, but I duck and go into his instead. The parents are none the wiser. I search everywhere I can think, under the bed, in the drawers, in his boxes and nightstand. Nothing. I come to the conclusion that he probably took it to school to show off, and I am furious. I'm seeing red. I go into this zen sort of trance. I find his Pokemon cards, rip them all. His G.I. Joes receive makeovers with a Sharpie and some become suddenly quadriplegic. I didn't feel bad. They knew the risks of war. I think I may have even scratched some of his video game CDs subtly enough that it wouldn't look purposeful but would ruin the games. I stole the dice out of all his board games. I put everything back very carefully where I found it and then told my mother that I was getting sick and we had to go home early. We were never invited back to that house, for which I feel a little bad, but the revenge was the only thing that filled the blue eye-shaped hole in my heart. I ran into him at the store years later and he asked me why I had torn up his room like I had. I asked him if he remembered my Blue Eyes White Dragon card and his eyes went wide. Suddenly everything seemed to click for him. We stared at each other for a moment and then we went our separate ways. I like to believe we struck a truce that day, an end to the violence. But sometimes the memory of that card still wakes me up at night.